Ron Johnson, great senator from the state of Wisconsin. You know, Ron, I remember, I didn't know you, and I certainly didn't know your state. I went to Milwaukee for the very first time in my life a couple of years ago to go to the RNC, Republican National Convention. President Trump was nominated that Thursday night as our official nominee. And, of course, thank God he went on to win the presidency. But people may have forgotten he arrived, Ron, in your town, Milwaukee, Sunday. I got there Saturday, 4 days before he was nominated, wearing a big white patch on his ear because the day before, as I watched in horror from my hotel room in Milwaukee, a would-be assassin didn't kill Trump, killed somebody else, tried to kill him. So he was in your town with you, Ron Johnson, literally the first time they tried to kill him.
So you may remember the side note to that. I had given President Trump a chart on April 2nd of 2024, that same year, immigration chart that he started using immediately in the campaign. It was that chart that he looked at that he credits with saving his life. So there's a little bit of serendipity there. But, you know, based on what happened, again, you know, another act of violence, without a doubt, stirred up by the radical left. I mean, this is not coming from both sides. You know, I sprang from the Tea Party. We had a lot of big rallies in 2009, 2010, but the Tea Party rallies were famous for nobody leaving litter behind. So there was no violence. Fast forward 4 years, the Summer of Love, the BLM, the Antifa peaceful protests where a couple dozen people lost their lives, 2,000 police officers were injured. You had about $2 billion worth of property damage, and the media just overlooks that. But if I really, again, I entered politics in 2010 because of that Tea Party movement. If I really think back and just, you know, think about how this has all been ginned up, I go back to October 30th of 2008, when then presidential candidate Barack Obama stated, "We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America." And that wasn't just frivolous rhetoric. He was deadly serious about that, and that's pretty much what he and his disciples, his fellow travelers, community organizers, have been doing since 2009. And they've been laying the groundwork. They have all these shadow groups. I mean, who organized all those BLM Antifa riots? Who paid for training 30,000 activists to obstruct justice, obstruct ICE, and then encourage those activists to put themselves into harm's way, knowing they could get hurt? And, of course, two of them became martyrs to their cause. You know, the left doesn't express any sympathy whatsoever for the hundreds, thousands of victims of crime created by the illegal immigrants they allowed into this country, unvetted. But all they talk about are the two martyrs that they encouraged to put themselves into harm's way. No, the left is sick. I'm glad I heard earlier Alan Dershowitz has finally seen the light.
Yeah.
And he's rejected the Democrat Party. That's probably, you know, he may not be fully Republican, but he has rejected the Democrats. We need Americans across the board to reject that vile ideology of the radical left.
Yeah, I've actually made it my business to do that with people. I think I've also turned Michael Rappaport into a Republican, other lesser-known people in New York. That's been my job the last couple of years, and I'm glad you said left. I say this with all respect, Senator Johnson, I don't want to hear about the radical left. I don't. I'm sorry. A lot of people at my station and my business do that. As far as I'm concerned, the left. That's it. What radical left? You know, the guys that were the most moderate the last 20 years, even the new guys on the scene, Hakeem Jeffries, would you consider him radical left? No, you wouldn't. But you know what? He's encouraged violence. Chuck Schumer. So I actually get offended when I hear people mention the radical left. Do me a favor on this show. Just call them the left. Because at this point, I can't tell the difference.
No, just call them Democrats. I mean, it's an interchangeable term. I have no trouble with you pointing that out at all. No, Democrats have become the radical left. They are one and the same party. Again, that's what I'm pointing out. President Obama was their standard bearer. He is the guy who is, I think, largely responsible for the division and the hate we're seeing in the country today. Now he He was well spoken. He's a articulate guy. But what he, his disciples, people like Eric Holder, his supporters, his funders like George Soros. I mean, they're the ones that funded all these radical left Democrat DAs that refused to prosecute crime. He's the one that issued the Deferred Action on Childhood Arrival order, which was the catalyst for all this future mass illegal immigration. That was Obama. That was his idea. And he's the one that has done such harm to our healthcare system by trying to turn it into a single-payer system. And Obamacare has done, although it didn't go that far, it's done a great deal of harm. It certainly didn't reduce the cost of healthcare.
Oh, no. He also, under his presidency, the first black man, he was going to save us. BLM was born under Obama. You had the Ferguson, Missouri with that guy Michael Brown, who was a terrible person. You had here in New York on Staten Island, you had Eric Garner, you had Freddie Gray in Baltimore, Maryland. All that was under Barack Obama. But I want to move to Secret Service, Ron, because I specifically remember talking to you that week in Wisconsin, and you were very, very upset, and you talked about it in Congress for a long time, about what you thought was a terrible job by the Secret Service protecting President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. We still have questions. A guy was murdered that day. Now fast forward to this Saturday, and folks are asking, how does a guy end up even close to the door of a ballroom with a shotgun, a handgun, and 2 knives? Now, President Trump texted me yesterday morning. He said, thank you for checking in, Sid. I'm okay. And he credited his Secret Service. But as was pointed out on this show, he's always quick outside of Butler to credit the people that protect him. Outside of Trump, I'm hearing a lot more people this morning criticizing what they saw on Saturday night. What about you, Senator Johnson?
Well, again, the criticism I have is, first of all, you assembled so many of our top leaders, the president, vice president, so many of his cabinet officers. We shouldn't do that at a heightened level of risk in this country. That'd be probably my main criticism there. Plus, the second one, you can't do anything about it until we have a much larger ballroom, at the White House where you can actually have it secure. I mean, as long as we don't have a venue like that, and you have to hold them in places where you have, a 1,000-room hotel, that, again, you're not going to body search everybody that checks in that hotel for the 3 weeks prior to that. So they set up, what ended up being a successful security perimeter. And God bless the Secret Service and federal law enforcement who put their lives in danger to keep us and the president safe. That's the group, by the way, that Democrats have defunded, that they refuse to pass a bill that would fund all of DHS. Again, that is the radical left Democrat Party. That is what they're doing. So no,
I'm glad you brought. Hold on, I'm going to stop you right there because today happens to be day 72 where the Secret Service is not being paid. 72 days, to your point, Ron Johnson. So with that said, and with what we saw on Saturday night, do you believe what happened Saturday will bring the Democrats to the table and maybe speed up this DHS process?
Well, what I called for yesterday on Sunday's shows is Leader Thune ought to hold a vote right away on the full DHS funding bill that the House has passed. I mean, we could do this literally in one vote in the Senate, fund it all. And you should do that. And if Democrats reject it after what happened on Saturday night, this is the moment to end the filibuster. Right now we do not have the votes to end the filibuster, but we did not have the votes to basically nuke the filibuster when it came to nominees, when the Democrats were so obnoxious and obstructionist, okay, on President Trump's nominees. He wasn't even going to get 500 nominees in his first Congress, when normally the average is about 1,100. The Democrats were not allowing him to staff the administration, so we didn't have the votes to nuke the filibuster for the nomination process till Democrats were so obnoxious that we did have the votes. So again, Democrats provide the votes, and we won't have the votes to end the filibuster. If they don't provide the votes, I think Republicans who have refused to end the filibuster at this point in time, who refuse to acknowledge the fact that when the Democrats have the chance, they will end the filibuster. I have no doubt about that. I have a lot of colleagues who do, but this may just be the catalyst that will allow the Senate to become functional again. How much more broken can the U.S. Senate get? That's the argument. Oh, we can't break this, this revered institution by ending the filibuster. We didn't even have the filibuster till the early 1900s.
Right.
We'll survive.
Two more will let you run. I thought a silly conversation on the Sunday shows yesterday. I thought you were great with Maria. I love that show. It's my favorite show. Was a lot of the hosts were asking, do you think now Saturday night we're going to turn the corner and Democrats are going to realize the ill of their ways and there'll be more people united? Could we stop that nonsense? I heard the same thing after Butler, Pennsylvania. Remember, Joe Biden called President Trump, I'm glad you're okay. I keep hearing the same thing over and over again. And it takes these Democrats, whether it's the media or politicians or idiots in the street, one day, maybe 2 days, to go right back to who they are. Why do we keep asking time and time again if that's the turning point? Let's just see it the way it is, which is they hate us, they hate Ron Johnson, they hate Sid Rosenberg, they hate President Trump. F them. We don't need them. Let's move forward with this country and try to save ourselves without always worrying. Like if I hear one more time that this Rep. Maria Perez in California actually said, can we stop trying to kill the president? Good for her. They found one person, one Democrat in 24 hours that actually said that. I'm tired of hearing it, Ron. It's not going to happen.
Well, I guess hope springs eternal. I did point out, so many of these Democrats run as moderates, right? That you almost think they're the Republican candidate, and then they get into office, like the new mayor of Virginia, and they govern as radical leftists. So no, they're not going to change their stripes, not at all. So I point out repeatedly, as I've called for ending the filibuster in our conferences. I'm not popular for doing that, by the way. But as I've done that, I've tried to remind my colleagues or point out to them, you do realize the Democrat Party is at war with us. They're just not a political opposition. They want to wipe us out as a political opposition because their overall goal is to turn America into a one-party nation. That's why they flooded millions of unvetted immigrants into this country, into their sanctuary cities and states, plus up the census, increased members of Congress. When they do, and again, resist all election integrity laws, when they do get the chance, they'll end the filibuster, turn D.C., Puerto Rico into states, former Democrat senators, pack the Supreme Court, nationalize elections, automatic registration, mail-in ballots. That's their game plan. That's why they will never vote for election integrity measures, because that is existential to that overall game plan. So, no, they're not going to change this. They are at war with us. And unfortunately, too many of my Republican colleagues they don't want to believe it. Okay, they're not.
Yeah. Well, I believe it. So I believe it, and I'm not willing to back down. So I did something a couple of nights ago. Wrap it up with this. There's a guy. He's running against Cory Booker for that Congress seat, the Senate seat in New Jersey, I should say. His name is Alex Sedan. I like him. I actually spoke at his event at Trump National in Colts Neck, New Jersey last week. He's all about medical freedom. He's all about parental choice. And because of him and the people in and around him, which include Bobby Kennedy, Aaron Siri, some local people as well, I'm starting to get really well versed on just how much misinformation was told to the American people over the years, whether it's vaccinations when you're a child, the COVID vaccination, given the choice to parents to put what they want in their children's bodies. I'm becoming one of these people, Ron, that is basically ready to work for Bobby Kennedy. So Wednesday's a big day for you. How Biden health officials purposely turned a blind eye toward the COVID-19 vaccine safety signals. You got some big people stopping by. Tell me more about Wednesday.
Well, again, because of Bobby Kennedy's commitment to radical transparency, we end up getting 8 to 11 million pages. And it takes a long time to sift through that, but we found that they not only hid the signal on myocarditis, but they also saw a signal in late 2022 on ischemic stroke in people over 65. Week after week, they hid that as well. But the bigger revelation is they were warned that an analytical system on VAERS, this is in March of 2021, just a couple months after the emergency use authorization, they were told by the inventors of the analytic system that system was going to mask serious safety signals. And then a little less than a month later, they were shown the analysis of a system that unmasked that, where there were 49 cases of extreme masking, 25 safety signals, And those people were told to basically go away, cease and desist. We got to be consistent. We're going to use the old system, even though they knew. So Peter Marks, the head of CBER, knew that their analytic system on VAERS was hiding serious safety signals, sudden cardiac death, ischemic, or that type of thing, and they buried it. They hid it, and that's what the hearing's about on Wednesday.
That is an amazing cause. I know I speak to a lot of ladies, Moms for Liberty, for example, and ladies that held that great rally in Jersey back in 2020 for parental and freedom, religious freedom, and all those medical freedoms. And, Ron, you're a hero to them. They love you, as I do. So continued success. You're a great senator and a great friend. And we'll talk again very, very soon, Ron Johnson. Thank you so much.
Have a great day. Stay well.
You too, buddy. Ron Johnson right there, the terrific senator from the state of Wisconsin. Who knew that me and the senator from Wisconsin would end up being good friends, but we are.
Thanks for listening to Sid and Friends in the Morning. You can hear Sid and Friends in the Morning weekday mornings at 6. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?